Good afternoon, everybody. I'm hoping you're having a good day. I'm kind of going back right now to the way I used to do things, just kind of randomly talk and get out what I want information instead of trying to follow along with pictures and comments and stuff like that I've taken off the internet to go along with the narrative I'm trying to put out. So I'm just going to wing it like I normally used to do, guys. I'm more comfortable doing that than I am any other thing. Anyway, today we'll talk about something that's a little weird, I guess you call it. But recently I've been paying attention to the stuff about Tartaria and how our date's been manipulated and time has been changed and everything like that. And I run across a video that really kind of explained it out quite well. Uh, the gentleman that came out with the video, his name is Barry Stepp. He's on YouTube. Y'all can go find it. Go check out his channel. He has some interesting information on there. I mean, his information is taken from other people's research, and he plays clips, but he also talks about stuff. And he hit upon something that really kind of explained a little bit about the Tartarian, the erasure of 1,000 years, and other things like that. So, they talk about the numbers, 1400s, 1500s, 2000s. That first number, that 1, actually is a J or a Roman numeral I. Roman I. And so we talk about it being a J. So what does the J stand for? Well, some will say after Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar also going to be contended as Jesus Christ in some areas and everything, if you look at it like that. But the J stands for a certain period. After that, the things change. So we're going to use some biblical references and spell out a little bit of a story of what is going on. Maybe, there's 1,000 years missing, guys. There's no doubt about it. So anyway, we'll do a little biblical thing here. And there's a thing called Satan's little year. And it's about his 1,000-year reign upon earth and everything. And people's talked about that recently and everything. But when is it going to start? When is Armageddon? When is this time of the second coming of Christ and the time of the devil on the planet? Some people think that the time of the devil, Satan's time on the planet, is now. That we have already went through the Armageddon, if you will, the second coming of Christ. And now we're getting ready for the time of Satan is now upon the earth. And then the second return of Christ is upon us. We see a lot of weird things going on in the world, guys. There's no doubt about it. It's like people is hog wild about getting their agendas done and, increasing the population or decreasing the population. If you look at it in a way, guys, I mean, even God says at the end there will be a battle between the good and evil, between Satan and God, his army against God's army. So we're kind of seeing the evidence of this going on with this godliness that's going on in the world. That's what I'm going to call it. I'm not going to call it right or wrong, but the pull away from the Christian belief, the God belief that we all have. So anyway, going back to the beginning when this J started, or this I started. Well, if we go back and look, Jesus lived for around 33 to 35 years. All right, there's no doubt about that. That's everything. And I've always been under the assumption that our time frame began then. It did in a way, but actually began after the death of Christ. That was always called it after death, AD. So Jesus said during his time when he's talking to his disciples that he would come back within their generation. Well, a lot of people speculate that generation means their heirs, their descendants on down the line, is somewhere way off in mystical land and everything like that. But we got to think about it. He also said that their generation would not see death before his return. So we all put this off as some kind of mythical date. But he already did return. Now, I'll explain it. He will return within their generation. Their generation will not know death. So at that time, the people lived around 150 years, guys. No doubt we had better living, better food and stuff like that. And then they didn't have the diseases and the complications we got going on. So they did live longer. So if Jesus died around 35 years old, the man got a lot done in the 35 years he was around, guys. So, we won't talk about that. So within the generation of these people that followed his disciples and his followers, they would have to be within, if he was 35 and his followers around the age of 30-ish, well, 120 years after that would be putting it around 150. And that is when he came back and gathered his followers and his disciples, in my estimate and everything like that. And therefore began the number, the letter J before the new numbers. I do have some evidence that supports this. Now, the fall of the Roman Empire, which is the ones that was against Jesus, the Jewish people also was against Jesus, and they're the ones that asked for his death. The emperor of Rome said, "Who do you want, Barabbas or Barabbas or Jesus?" And they said Barabbas, even though he was a murderer and a thief. So we know what the Jews thought of Jesus. So he was put to death. He was around 35 years old. And then 150 years after that would put it around the time of what they talked about. The Council of Nice was around that time. 33 years, J 33. That would be 33 years after the time of Jesus. 33 years after his death. The actual beginning of the fall of the Roman Empire began, they say in the history books, at 236. Well, if we take around the number 2 off the beginning and replace that with the J, that was 36 years after the death of Christ. The actual fall of the Western Roman Empire, as they call about it, which is the modern gauge that they use, happened in the 480s. Again, we take away the number 4 and replace it with the J. That would put it around 80 years after the death of Christ. Y'all see why this would be apparent. And the Dark Ages began around 486. You take the number J, the number 4, and replace it with J. 86 years after the death of Christ. Why is that important? Well, because Jesus said that after he comes back and gathers his followers and his disciples, will begin the little year of Satan's reign upon earth. So that would put it around 86 years, well, 33 years after his death, and then 80 years after his death. We saw the fall of the Roman Empire, which would coincide with the death of Jesus. During that time, the fall of the Roman Empire would be the revenge of God upon the planet, upon the Roman Empire. So for that first little bit, first 86 years, we saw the buildup of Satan's minions, his domain on earth. And then since then, we have been seeing the beginning of the fall of the Western Empire. I mean, all across the planet, guys. So if we replace that first number, the 4 or the 2, with the J, and then the 1,000 years of reign, if we add another 1,000 years to this, that would bring us to approximately, we're not in 2025, we're in 1025. Let me make that a point. That minus 1,000 years would make us at 1025. So 1,000 years after the fall of the Roman Empire, which was in 236, or actually 36, 1,000 years after that would bring us up to around 2030, the Agenda 2030, when they want everything in line with what they want, which is the beginning of the fall. So 1,000 years after the fall of the Roman Empire, beginning of the fall, which was 236, or actually 36, we would come up with 2030, 2036, 2035, in that era. So again, it's within the 1,000-year range upon the reign of Satan upon the planet Earth. So there's a lot of evidence out there, guys, that points to this and everything like that. You know, we got to do magic math, if you want to call it that. Actually, it's just basic common knowledge math. That if we take off that first little number there on the 33 or the 333, the Council of Nice, the 236, beginning of the fall of the Roman Empire, the Eastern and Western Roman Empire, and then the 480s, the actual beginning of the fall of the Western Roman Empire, and the Dark Ages began at 486. We also know about the Crusades and everything like that, the Black Plague, the persecution of non-Christians throughout the European Empire, and that brings us up to the current date. So, guys, that is your big lie, guys, that there's 1,000 years that actually brings us closer to what the time of Jesus. The whole thing about the Tartarian Empire being erased and everything, guys, that's modern history. And it wasn't thousands of years ago. It was just around 100 years ago. A little over 100 years ago that the Tartarian Empire was erased. And that puts a lot closer to the age of Jesus. Why is it important? Well, the age of Jesus was enlightenment. We had free power. They wasn't run around in sandals and robes in the desert, guys. They had energy all over the place. They had covered over. Another thing, I know, guys, I'm really random because that's the way I am. I'll jump all over the place because these thoughts come up to me. One of the things I've noticed on the globe or on a picture of the earth is all across one area, especially in the Middle East, but also spreads across Africa, the Middle East, all around the world. There's one certain zone of the planet Earth that is laid waste to. Now, it lines up with Egypt, the Middle East, all the way into China. Also lines up with around the Grand Canyon of the United States, that this area was laid waste to for some reason or another, and it went global. And there's a reason why. It is because if you look at the planet Earth, or at Earth, anything from 33 degrees north was Tartaria, 33 degrees south was another group of people, it's another society, and the degrees in between it was the Canaanites, or the Middle Earth, if you will. A lot of different things like that, but something tells me that something happened in that area between 33 north and 33 south on the degrees on parallel lines, that there was an uprising, and they tried to rise up against the other areas, and they was laid waste to, and the fallout was the erasure of the Tartarian age, and perhaps even Atlantis also. There's a lot of evidence pointing this, guys, but we are 1,000 years shorter of time than what they've been telling us. And Tartaria was a lot closer. Jesus was a lot closer. And therefore, in the beginning, was a lot closer. Even the flood. Food for thought, guys. And you know, I'm not trying to go out here and convince everybody that we've been lied to, but I've always said this: my truth may not be your truth, and your truth may not be anybody else's truth. But if we go with that, though, and take a general consensus of knowledge and information that's available, without too much common sense use, guys, we can come to an idea of what really is the truth. And that's what I'm after. It doesn't matter if it leads me towards God or away from God or towards something else. The truth is always the truth, and you cannot deny the truth. You can manipulate the truth, but you cannot deny it. Hope you have a groovy day. Later, taters.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!